Hi, this is a speaking video describing how the Wilesco feed water pump works and some modifications I did to mine. I modified this some months ago, but I've just gone through it again to make some improvements. I put Japan Black on the base, just crudely, that's why it's drip marked, and I rubbed it to a satin finish so it'll better match the base. This doesn't have to have a fancy finish. That's Japan Black there. This is regular black paint here. I don't know if the color difference can be seen in this light. Japan Black, when it's shiny, is blacker than other paints. Okay, now on to the project. How there's a little brass knob on the end of these things. It's sealed with a dab of yellow paint as it comes from the factory, and they tell you don't take it apart, because if you do, you're likely to get the check valves out of position and not be able to get it back together. Well, the way it works is way down inside the bore here. Down in there is where this check valve goes. It's a little bit of brass with a small loose-fitting O-ring on it. To install it, I almost have to do this off camera, but I'll try here. I never get this the first try. You have to use a little blue tack or something. Hope the O-ring doesn't fall off. A bit of grease there. I got it in there. Now can I get the blue tack to let go? That's usually where I fail. Yeah, I'm going to have to do this. The blue tack stayed in there. My technique is not perfected. Let's take it back out. So I'll do that off camera. Anyway, that has to go in first. And then the other part, this, and you see that's got a long nose on it? That goes in. It goes in all the way and crosses over that hole you see there. And that's what locks the little check valve, the inlet valve, in place. And that's why they don't want you to remove the brass cap, because if you do, and take this out, and then you should stroke the pump, the little inlet valve will pop out of its seat. It cannot be replaced without taking the pump apart. To get the pump apart, this is a press-fit cap. When it's in there tightly, it seems like it's part of the cylinder. Well, to get it out, you use a drift, a soft metal like aluminum. Square the edge and tap, tap from either side. Tap, tap, and this will come off. Okay. Let me show you a modification I did. Two modifications. I'd got rid of the rocking lever pump mechanism. A direct action is better. For a handle, I chose an old coin. Put it on with epoxy putty. And just tonight, this is one reason I took this apart, this plunger would rattle in the shake of that hole. So I reamed the hole oversized and I lined it with red bushing cloth. So this will work without any extra lubrication needed, nice and smooth. It'll stop that little rattle that I'd get at certain speeds. This is the pump seal. It's an O-ring. For lubrication, smear it with some silicone grease you can get from the auto parts store. The kind of grease that was used on old-fashioned distributors. So after I get my little guy back home, I can then put this in. Now this has an O-ring on it also. I better fit that now. Okay, so the O-ring goes on. That's your outlet check valve. This goes in. I'll just drop this in. Kaplunk. Got to go all the way in. There it goes. Now, they supply a spring made of stainless steel, and it's really too long and too strong. I've already cut this short, but even shorter, it presses too hard on that valve. It makes the pump hard to operate. So I just made a new spring out of brass spring wire, which has a lower rate than steel, and I'll have to adjust this off camera for proper action. This spring need only be strong enough to ensure that that O-ring self-seats, because normally steam pressure coming in here will cause that O-ring to seat with plenty of pressure. But when there's no pressure, if the O-ring isn't seated, you'll get a suction on your water supply when your boiler cools off, and it'll suck water into the boiler when you may not want that. And so that would go in there, and then you're going to put the cap on. All the cap does is seal, of course, and press on the spring. And you can adjust the spring. I can't do anything through the viewfinder. You can adjust the spring to have the right tension by adjusting its length. So I'll do all of the rest of the assembly off camera and then put this on the engine base. I see my new spring doesn't want to come out, but it'll come out. Oh, there we go. So you see, it's not so complicated. The only tough part about getting it back together is putting this little guy back in. There are better ways than this blue tack. I just haven't found them yet. Okay, those are the bits. Next I'll put the pump together off camera and see if it still works. Back again. I checked that the inlet valve is sealing by applying suction to this tube, and it's perfectly tight, which is vital for it to work well. Just as the plunger seal must be perfectly good for it to work well. Now the other thing, the one thing that you can adjust is the tension of that spring that seats the outlet valve. If the spring is too strong, it's going to make the pump hard to pump, because on the downstroke you have to lift this valve in here off of its seat. So all the spring is there for is just to ensure that it stays seated when there's no pressure on it. Let's see how this pumps. It's priming now. It pumps fine, but you know, from experience, I can tell you, this is hard to pump right now, harder than it should be. It tells me that this spring in here is too strong, so I will be taking off this nut, take the spring out, and clip a coil or two off of its length. See if I can get it to even come out. Oh, there we go. So I'll do that off camera. We'll make the spring, just the new brass spring, just a little bit shorter, and see if it pumps more easily.